Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here with Wonderful Wetlands, a virtual celebration with the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. It is wonderful to have you all here. We're going to get started in just a few more minutes as we let people join in. But in the meantime, my name is Michelle Garcia. I am the Educational Program Coordinator for the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. And as the educational program coordinator, I do lots of educational events, just like this one. This event is actually a part of not a series, but kind of a regular set of programs that we have going on. The first Friday of every month, we're going to have at least one virtual program highlighting a new topic in one of our preserves, maybe some relevant issues that are going on. Like, this one's about wetlands. Obviously, we've been experiencing a lot of wet weather this January, but also yesterday was World Wetlands Day. So I thought that doing a little virtual celebration about wetlands was definitely in order. Again, I want to thank you all so much for joining me here. We're just going to get started in a few more minutes. If you just popped on, my name is Michelle Garcia, and I will be your host for this virtual program. I'm hoping to wrap this up in about 45 minutes. And I want there to be lots of time for questions at the end, because I'm sure you guys will have some, especially once you realize how cool your local wetlands are. I mean, they're pretty sick, and there's lots of different resources and ways you can get involved with your local wetlands that I'm excited to tell you about. As a Zoom webinar, your mics and cameras are not active, so I can't see or hear any of you. And there is no chat function, but there is a Q&A button. You should be able to find that at the very bottom of your screen. You can type questions or comments as I present. I promise I'm going to try to get to all of those questions at the end of the program. But if you want to just practice using that Q&A button, you can go ahead and find that button and type in, where are you viewing us? Where are you joining us from today? I know I'm joining from San Jose, California, where our office space is, but try to use that button and tell us, where are you joining us from today? Nice, we already got some tech savvy people. Morgan Hill, thank you for joining us from Morgan Hill, San Jose. That's awesome. There's also an anonymous option if you would like to answer or type in a question or comment anonymously, if you're interested. Lots of locals. We got another San Jose. Welcome, welcome. That's good, because I am going to be talking a lot about San Jose wetlands. So if you're joining us from far away, I'm going to try my best to explain everything about where we are and kind of the situation of our land area. But thanks for joining us, all you locals. All right, without further ado, it's time to get started with Wonderful Wetlands, a virtual celebration. Before I get started, I wanted to say I am a staff member of the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. If you've never heard of us before, we are a local government agency in San Jose, and we work to protect water, wildlife, and working lands, as well as work to connect people to nature. We also want to acknowledge that the Open Space Authority works within lands that were originally stewarded by the Awaswas, Chochenyo, Mutsun, and Tamian-speaking peoples. Today, we are honored to partner with the Ama Mutsun Tribal Band and Muwekma Ohlone Tribe of the San Francisco Bay in our shared work to protect and restore the environment and connect people to the land. We do manage land all over the Santa Clara Valley, and so we are excited to welcome you into just a little bit of that land that is known as a wetland. Also, I wanted to mention that this year is the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority's 30th year anniversary, which is very exciting. We've got some really cool stuff planned for this year. This is just one cool program out of many, many programs that we're going to have going on. So stay tuned. Stay on our email list for lots of other opportunities and fun stuff that we have happening. So happy World Wetlands Day. Like I said, yesterday was World Wetlands Day, but I think today is a more appropriate day to celebrate. We got a little rain going on in San Jose, which means all of our wetlands, all of our streams, all of our plants are soaking up all that water. Um, we do still need it. I know we got a lot of water this past January, but it's still great to see more rain on the way. Today in this program, we're going to be talking about some basics like what is a wetland, who lives and utilizes a wetland, and why are they important? Not everyone is familiar with the concept of a wetland. I know I certainly wasn't always, but they're super important. And I hope that by the end of this program, you are also aware of the importance of wetlands and you know how much they deserve being celebrated. So let's dive in. What is a wetland? Well, to put it simply, a wetland is land that is kind of wet. It's different than a pond or a lake or an ocean or a river in that wetlands are usually pretty large areas of land that really only have maybe a few feet of water on top of them. This means that the soil is super, super damp and very, very saturated, and the water level is pretty shallow all throughout. Sometimes it's high enough where you could go swimming, you could go kayaking. There are a lot of different versions of a wetland. There are marshes, estuaries, wet meadows, vernal ponds. But for the purposes of this program, we're just kind of refer to them all as wetlands. Wetlands are often seasonal, so they might not be around year-round. They're just going to be around during the wet season. But there are some wetlands that are around year-round and they stay wet. When I say that a wetland isn't around year-round, I mean that sometimes they dry out into a hot summer. For example, the wetland that you see in this photo is in the Santa Clara Valley. This is one of the areas that the Open Space Authority helps to protect. And this is a seasonal wetland. It might look like a big, vast pond with lots of habitat and lots of animals and birds in it, but it's actually only around during the winter. That's the case for a lot of wetland areas, which means they're a really unique habitat since they're not often stable year-round. Wetlands can be freshwater or what's known as brackish water. Brackish water is when freshwater meets ocean water or salt water. So usually brackish water is not as salty as ocean water, but much saltier than your average fresh water. It makes this special water mixture that's called brackish. So some wetlands are found kind of closer inland, closer to freshwater sources, and are fueled by rain or groundwater, whereas other wetlands are fueled by creeks coming in towards the ocean. This is really important as we talk about the Bay Area. There's tons of wetlands surrounding the Bay Area because there's a lot of space for that ocean water that's in the bay to meet up with fresh water, and that creates this mushy, gushy marsh area of tidal wetlands. Because this area is so unique, it makes for some really cool habitat for wildlife. Migratory birds utilize wetlands a ton, and so do some really unique animals. Some really cool birds you can find in our wetlands that are in the local Santa Clara Valley area are some killdeer, ruddy ducks, and great blue herons, and of course, a ton more. I really love killdeer. Killdeer are just these cute little, kind of like plover looking birds. They're really closely related to plovers that you might see running on the ocean sand, trying to catch mollusks. But you can find them right here in South San Jose. They often nest on the ground and are just little tiny cute birds. Ruddy ducks are also really cool. They are known for their bright blue beaks. They're the duck that you see in the middle photo. And they like to blow bubbles kind of on their chest in the water to help attract mates. And you also have the very elegant great blue heron. Herons often fish in estuaries, oceans, creeks for different fish and other food. I have seen a great blue heron eat a squirrel once, though. That was in the middle of summer, and I think its usual wetlands were probably really dry, and it resorted to eating a squirrel. That was Kind of wild. I actually saw that at another property that the Open Space Preserve manages. That was up in Sierra Vista Open Space Preserve. Another really cool spot. And of course, there's a ton of other birds that also hang out in wetlands. Like I mentioned, migratory birds, wetlands are super important for them, whether they migrate to a wetland and stay there, or they take a break in a wetland during their thousands and thousands of miles of migration. They're really important food source. They're really important water source for migratory birds. Yeah. It's not just birds that you can find in wetlands, though. There are a ton of really cool animals. These are some of my 3 favorite amphibians, reptiles that you can find in the Santa Clara Valley. To the far left, we've got the California tiger salamander. In the middle, we have the western pond turtle. And on the far right, we have the California red-legged frog. All of these amphibians, reptiles, very much rely on seasonal wetlands, just like the ones that I've been showing you here. Unfortunately, all of these animals are endangered. They're pretty hard to find. And so if you do see one out in a wetland in the wild, it's a pretty rare sighting. Count yourself lucky. They are such wonderful little creatures. I love the face of the California tiger salamander. It just looks so cute with its little eyes are so far apart. But they play really vital roles in our ecosystem, and it's sad to see that as wetlands disappear, we also get less and less of these really wonderful animals. Now, of course, it's not just birds and amphibians. Mammals also heavily rely on our wetlands as sources for water. Since these wetlands aren't around all year, every year, mammals make lots of use of wetlands as a freshwater source. So they're also really important to mammals like us. So kind of as I mentioned, wetlands are often found bordering larger bodies of water, such as oceans, lakes, rivers, underground aquifers. And since they are kind of like a meeting point from the land to large bodies of water, they play this really important role as filters. As groundwater kind of rushes through a wetland, that really saturated, heavy soil helps to absorb a lot of nutrients, which is why we often see so much plant animal life in wetlands. It gets a lot of that nitrogen coming off of the groundwater, so the soil can be pretty nutrient dense. But it also helps leach out lots of toxins. So if there's any chemicals or pollutants, they often get caught in the wetland, which means that because of our wetlands, our larger sources of water are cleaner. So the more wetlands means often the cleaner our large bodies of waters, which is really important, especially for freshwater wetlands and water sources. Unfortunately, we have seen the large disappearance of the wetlands. As I said, they kind of take on a lot of pollutants, and because of that, wetlands can not always be the most pleasant place, according to humans. That shallow water, as you know, people have expanded and pollution and industrialization grows and grows and grows, there can be a lot of pollutants that get stuck in wetlands. And those pollutants are not always healthy or good for the plants and animals that live in them. Wetlands can get kind of stinky because of that shallow water with all of that pollutants that get stuck in it, with all of that nitrogen that gets deposited in there. It's not always like a pleasant place for people. It's not easy to explore. And it's also usually right in front of a beautiful ocean, a beautiful lake. And so in the past, people have tended to destroy wetlands. This has led to the huge disappearance of wetlands throughout the Bay Area. In this photo, you see on the left-hand side, like a historical map of tidal marshes back from pre-1800. So this is a map of the Bay Area, and all of the green that you see around it is the estimated historical amount of tidal marshes, and that is about 200,000 acres of tidal marshes that surrounded the Bay Area. Note that these are all tidal marshes, so this is where ocean meets freshwater. This map does not show freshwater marshes, which could probably easily double that amount of acreage of wetlands. So pre-1800s, we haven't seen a ton of development, especially not compared to now. These wetlands are pretty pristine and they are intact. Fast forward to, I think this second map was made in 2020. We have lost about 90% of our tidal marshes. So we've got 10 to 5% remaining of tidal marshes. In the map that you see to the right, this is the same Bay Area. The lightest green color you see are tidal marshes that exist as they were back before the 1800s. So that just those little bits of bright green, those are the remaining undeveloped tidal marshes. Again, this doesn't even show freshwater wetlands. Those are kind of harder to keep track of, but you can kind of guess that your freshwater wetlands have suffered the same consequences of tidal marshes. Of course, there's tons of habitat that was lost with this. Who knows how many plants, animals, how much more polluted our waterways have become because of this loss of vital wetlands. It was pretty big. This is due to sea level changing, rising and falling. This is due to climate change causing more severe droughts and the evaporation and drying out of wetlands. But this is also largely due to the industrialization and expansion of cities surrounding the Bay Area, such as San Francisco and San Jose. Luckily, it's not too sad of a story. I mean, it is a pretty sad story, but now in modern day, we have started to learn and recognize the vital importance of these wetlands in this area. And so this map also shows some restored habitat, some restored marshlands around the Bay Area. Like I said, the light green are the marshes that were never developed, were still pristine. The true green, that like middle green color, shows restored lands, so restored bay lands, and that dark green color shows planned restoration, so restoration that is in the work and will hopefully be coming in the near future. So obviously, we're still not back to the same 200,000 acres of tidal marshes that we had, but this map does show hope. There's still development for more and more marshes. Although we have in the past destroyed a lot of our local marshes and wetlands, it's not impossible to make a comeback. Including with our freshwater marshes, the rest of this presentation, we're going to be talking about some wetlands that the Open Space Authority continues to try to restore. And you'll see that these are really, really beautiful, healthy wetlands. And so although we have no idea how much we've lost since the 1800s, how much habitat and how much species have suffered because of the development of these wetlands, there's still more hope to come. One such area of wetlands in San Jose is the Laguna Seca wetland. So Laguna Seca is a freshwater wetland located in South San Jose in an area called the North Coyote Valley Conservation Area. So if you start to leave San Jose and you're taking the 101, you're driving right through Coyote Valley. And Laguna Seca is just right in that immediate area, which is really, really cool. Laguna Seca is just before where Fisher Creek and Coyote Creek meet to come together and kind of start going through San Jose and into the Bay Area. It is the largest remaining freshwater wetland in San Jose, which is pretty significant. This wetland is currently maybe 5-10 acres big. It's not like a huge wetland area, especially when you learn that in the 1800s, this wetland spanned almost 1,000 acres. This image that you see here is of Laguna Seca. This is a photo taken just last month, right after the storms of January. And you see that there is a huge body of water here. It almost looks like a pond, but it's just a few feet deep, and it's a beautiful little wetland area. It is a seasonal wetland though. So as I mentioned, in the 1800s, this area was over 1,000 acres big that was a part of the wetland. And it spanned year round. So this area dries up during the summer, but back in the day, historically speaking, this wetland was around year round and had spanned over 1,000 acres. One of the reasons that it is no longer the size that it is and is now seasonally was because Laguna Seca suffered a lot of development and damage. As San Jose started to expand and more people came, Laguna Seca was repurposed for agriculture in 1916. This wetland area was completely transformed. It was dredged, cleared, and burned to make way for agricultural fields. That's why we now have such a small remaining portion of Laguna Seca that's still a wetland today, because a lot of it is it's just not capable of acting the same way it historically was. You can see in the far left picture, this is construction crews actually building a dam through Laguna Seca. And just behind them is a street. You see a telephone pole. That's Santa Teresa Boulevard. I'm going to go back one more slide. So if you look at this photo, on the far right, you see a road kind of cutting through the hillside. That's Santa Teresa Boulevard. So if you're local, you might kind of start to figure out where we are. And as I said in the far left photo, that telephone pole, that's along Santa Teresa Boulevard. So they're in the far left photo, they're constructing a dam. In the middle photo, you see them burning a lot of the grassy, lush vegetation that once thrived in Laguna Seca. And then in the far right, you see them dredging a big area of that wetland. And this is because, if a large area of land was flooded for most of the year, you couldn't plant or use it for agriculture. But as we can see in some of these upcoming photos, now during the year, or previously during the year, it was used for agriculture and still to grow more crops. So up in this top photo, December 1916, you kind of see Laguna Seca before it was repurposed for agriculture. You see tons of lush vegetation, lots of damp wetlands. And then we fast forward 100 years to December 2016. It is still used for agriculture, but you see that it still kind of starts to flood every so often. You see the lines through the ground of where tractors have mowed. And then below at the very bottom, you see January 2017, and Laguna Seca is flooded. It is fully wet all the way around. So in 2017, there was actually a few really interesting things that happened. There was a major storm system that came through San Jose, and it caused tons of damage. It was not unlike the storm that we saw this past January. And this is also the time that the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority was creating the Coyote Valley Linkage Report. And this was a scientific report that was put out by our agency where we were actually able to find Laguna Seca and see it as a really vital piece of land, not only because it is a vital wetland habitat, not only because it helps prevent flooding from other city areas within San Jose, but it also allows for wildlife to venture from hillside to hillside, from the Santa Cruz Mountains to the Diablo Mountains range. So this is a really key piece of land for multiple reasons for our local ecosystem. And so during 2017, we noticed this piece of land and started the conversation with some of our partners about how we can work to protect Coyote Valley and this wetland, which led to some really cool things going on. Together with the Peninsula Open Space Trust and the City of San Jose, in 2019, we all banded together and were able to purchase the area of Laguna Seca, as well as much more area in Coyote Valley, and keep it as a nature preserve. For the first time in over 100 years, this area was finally allowed to be a wetland again. You see in the photo on the left, this is North Coyote Valley or Laguna Seca in 2019, which is full agriculture field. And then on the right, you see it just last month, fully flooded, a happy little wetland. Now, this restoration is a long, long process. Since 2019, we have done a lot of work in Laguna Seca and the surrounding wetlands to try to improve the impacts and return it to a healthy wetland. But as I said, there was a ton of damage to this ecosystem that was done in the 1900s, and it had, long been abandoned as a wetland. And so the restoration projects have been things where we remove invasive species of plants from the wetland habitat. We removed trash that had been dumped there. And we've also done a lot of scientific reports where we are gathering data about how much water actually falls in Laguna Seca every year and where is it going? Where is it trying to go? The damage that was done is not easily reversed, but this wetland is it's making a comeback pretty quickly. We've seen the return of many migratory birds and many animals that love this wetland. Yeah, it's been great to see the restoration of Laguna Seca, and we hope to see much more restoration to come. Again, removing a dam from a wetland is not an easy feat. We're currently in the process of trying to figure out what is best for Laguna Seca and the surrounding Coyote Valley wetlands. What's the best next steps? There's a lot of reasons why it is important to take time to figure out what is best for Laguna Seca and how we need to restore it. And this map shows a big reason. This map shows the 100-year floodplains within San Jose's sphere of influence. So the outline that you see here in this map is kind of San Jose and the surrounding areas. And the red and blue areas show San Jose's historic floodplain. The red areas are the areas that have been urbanized. So that's areas in our floodplain that there are currently buildings, homes, businesses that are on. Whereas the blue highlighted portions show areas that are undeveloped. Now you can see that over half of the floodplain in the surrounding San Jose area has been industrialized, urbanized, and there are people living there and using it. But as you see down at the bottom of this map, Coyote Valley is one of the few remaining areas of undeveloped floodplain, and that is where you find Laguna Seca. It's important to keep all of the as much as the undeveloped floodplain that we can in San Jose, because when we have events like what happened in 2017, when we have events like the atmospheric river that happened just last month, flooding becomes rampant and the ground cannot absorb that water like it should. And so urban areas get flooded and there's damage and people's lives get interrupted. But when floodplains are able to be open, like Laguna Seca, the water can fill those areas instead of our city streets and homes. Another reason why it is important to conserve local wetlands is because of groundwater recharge. There are lots of aquifers underneath San Jose and in Coyote Valley. Coyote Valley is actually Silicon Valley's largest remaining groundwater recharge area, which is really important because we are a large city here in San Jose. I think we're the 10th largest in the nation, and we utilize a lot of water, especially as climate change continues to hurt our water resources and affect our environment. Water becomes a more and more scarce resource. But when we have large open spaces, like in Coyote Valley, groundwater is actually able to be held in the wetland and seep in to the soil and down into the aquifer so that we have more clean water to drink later on. And lastly, not lastly, there's a ton of great benefits to keeping Laguna Seca a wetland, but another big reason is because it is a refuge for plants, animals, and people. Like I said at the very beginning, wetlands are a unique habitat. because they are seasonal, they dry out, they get really wet, and because they're this space where water flows through and have this really unique soil composition, there are a lot of really unique plants and animals that have adapted to grow there. And they are a refuge for animals to finally get a drink of fresh water. They're a place for migratory birds to rest and relax. And they're also a place where people can learn and heal as well. We've been able to do lots of great programs for birders, for animal lovers alike, where we get to walk not through Laguna Seca, but around the outside of it from a safe distance from all of the animals to be able to observe and see what's going on there. It's a really fun place to learn and a fun place to explore. We don't get to go out there too much because we want to let the wetland restore as it naturally can. But this is a safe place for animals and humans alike. So, yeah. Now, obviously, you are thinking, wow, wetlands are just the most amazing things in the entire world. What can I do to help protect and restore wetlands? Great question. There are lots of ways you can actually get involved. There is a lot of locals out here that are from San Jose watching this program, which means there's a lot of local wetlands in your area. One thing you can do is dispose of trash in appropriate containers. When we have severe rain and flooding events, any trash or items that are left out in the street often get washed down into our creeks, into our storm drains, and go into our water resources, like into wetlands. And remember, wetlands are the large areas of land that absorb the pollution first, which means that whatever gets out in the street is probably going to hit our wetlands hard, which is hard for the plants, it's hard for the amphibians that live there. And so disposing of trash in appropriate containers is one great way to help prevent pollution from getting into wetlands. I also ask that you are mindful of the disposal of any potentially harsh chemicals that you might be using either on your lawns or as you clean. A lot of water runoff can catch those chemicals and put them again into our wetlands where they might damage plants and animals. Another great way you can help protect your wetlands is get involved. Like I said, there are tons of great agencies and programs working to protect wetlands. The Open Space Authority is just one of them. In the Bay Area, there's a lot of wetlands and a lot of different agencies working to protect this vital resource and this important ecosystem. So join an educational program, just like you're doing today. Tell a friend about how important wetlands are. And you can also sign up to volunteer. There's lots of restoration projects that go on to protect these wetlands. In this photo right here, you see a wonderful group of volunteers who have worked to remove trash from Laguna Seca. It's definitely really rewarding work, and the wetlands, thank you very much, because there's a lot of endangered species that rely on wetlands. And without them, not only do we suffer, but the whole ecosystem suffers as well. And that's all I got for my talk about wetlands. I hope you enjoyed celebrating World Wetlands Day with me while we talked about the wetlands in Santa Clara Valley. We've got lots of time for questions now. So if you have a question or comment, please put it in our Q&A box down below. Let's see. Let me look through some of these questions. Someone said, yes, the photos look like they are by Santa Teresa and Bailey. That's where the North Coyote Valley wetland area is. Laguna Seca is right, kind of like right sandwiched in between the corner. Sorry, I need water. It's right in between the corner of Santa Teresa and Bailey. That whole area is considered Laguna Seca. And a good portion of that fills up with lots of water every winter. But like I said, historically, if you're thinking about the streets, and this is Santa Teresa and this is Bailey, the water wasn't just in Laguna Seca, but stretched all the way past Bailey and all the way down the valley. Someone says they're joining us from the UK. Thank you so much for joining us from so far away. I hope that all of my references about San Jose didn't leave you scratching your head. We have one guest asked, where is the best place to see amphibians? So wetlands are a great way to spot amphibians. Although you often can't get too close when you're visiting a wetland, you either have to stay very far away or they have you up on a large boardwalk so you're not walking through the wetland itself. Instead, I would recommend maybe visiting some of your local creeks and streams. There's lots of amphibians that love to live in there. Or if you are out hiking after a recent rain, maybe on a day like today, you can often find amphibians resting underneath logs or rocks. So if you see one that's close to the trail, give it a gentle little lift up and you might be able to find a cute little amphibian friend. Do remember though to always be careful when handling amphibians. Actually, I recommend you probably don't handle amphibians. They're pretty sensitive, most of them, especially with their skin. They can absorb and breathe through their skin. And so if you have any chemicals on your hand, like lotion, soap, hand sanitizer, sunscreen, it can be really harmful to them. And even just the touch of your hand can dry out their wet skin. So I recommend you just look at them from afar and say, hi, little buddy, and then just put the log back down on top of them. We had another question asking what steps are taken to restore the wetlands. Great question. Depending on the wetland and the kind of surrounding area, there's a bunch of different steps. I would say that some of the first steps that we've taken to restore our wetlands are removing trash and fence lines that might be surrounding the wetlands. Unfortunately, an area like Laguna Seca is popular for dumping trash in the past, and so we've had to remove a lot of trash that was infiltrating that ecosystem. There's also a lot of old infrastructure that existed there, like fence line and tools that we've had to remove so that it can just be a natural space. As you go further, you want to think about ways that you can promote more water coming into wetlands and travel in that water traveling into the appropriate directions. And that's kind of more long-term projecting and planning. You want to do thorough research before you try to divert water into specific areas, especially in an area like ours that border like a heavily industrial area, or else flooding can be likely. Is Laguna Seca wetland open to the public? It's not open to the public year-round, like every day, all day, but we do educational events out there and restoration projects. So those are usually guided activities. This is because Laguna Seca is a pretty sensitive area. Maybe in the long term, some dreams would be a really cool boardwalk out there where people can do bird walking on their own time whenever they'd like. That would be really cool. But it's not open yet. That's because we're still planning the long-term restoration of Laguna Seca and what's best for this wetland. I think it's nice that it just gets to be a nature preserve for now, and maybe more people can utilize it later on. But keep an eye out for events that we do out there so that you can get your chance to check that area out. Yay, someone says congrats on the purchase, save Coyote Valley. I know Laguna Seca, this wetland is just a small portion of Coyote Valley, but Coyote Valley is a beautiful area. If you haven't been to Coyote Valley, I highly recommend you check it out. Again, it's just south of San Jose, between San Jose and Morgan Hill, and it's also the valley floor between the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Diablo Mountain Range. And so there's a lot of cool wildlife sightings that you could possibly see there, lots of beautiful water running through it. It's amazing. Check it out. Okay, someone also asked, the current view is looking south. Can you use Mount Umunum as a landmark? So this view is looking south currently. I don't think you can use Mount Umunum as a landmark here. You can't really see it, but I'm pretty sure that in this picture that you see right here, you can see El Toro is just a little, it looks pretty small in this photo, but in the very, very far back where my mouse is, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but it's just a little pointy hilltop in the very background. I'm pretty sure that's El Toro, which is kind of a little hillside in Morgan Hill. Locals might know that. Yeah, but Mount Umunhum would be kind of like back behind the hills that you see in the far right of this photo. Someone said thank you. Thanks for joining. It was fun. Does another guest asked, does agricultural chemical runoff from nearby farms get into the wetlands? The answer is likely yes. Because there's lots of chemicals used in modern day farming, a lot of that does run off into wetlands, unfortunately. There is lots of ways to combat that, though. Another thing you can do to help restore freshwater sources is planting what's called something like a hedgerow. So there's basically, you would plant a lot of water-loving plants along the edge of your water source. And those plants would help absorb anything that's in the soil or any water runoff before it hits the wetland. So those plants can help absorb pollutants before it actually reaches more sensitive resources like the wetland or lakes or rivers. So that's one strategy we use. And that's also one strategy lots of farmers use. They'll plant little hedgerow borders around their farms to prevent any runoff of chemicals reaching the wetlands. So the answer is it can, but there are ways to prevent it. We've got one guest that asked, do you get monarch butterflies in Laguna Seca? Yes, we do. Migratory birds are not the only ones kind of stopping by along their journey. Butterflies do as well. There's lots of milkweed that has been growing in Laguna Seca, which is a wonderful thing to see. And we've gotten views of chrysalists and caterpillars and monarch butterflies. So I feel like the butterflies support the wetlands. Pretty important. Do you participate in species identification and species numbers monitoring? I assume you mean at Laguna Seca. And yes, we do. We partner with a lot of different agencies that work to collect seeds, to identify plants, to monitor sensitive species that are in the area. I'm not super familiar with that. I do more of the educational stuff, but we have a whole department dedicated to the research and technical data collection. So yes, there is. How do you find out about special events at Laguna Seca? That's a great question. I would recommend you go online and sign up for our newsletter. So we do events at all kinds of different events at all of the parks and lands that we manage. There's almost 30,000 acres of land that we manage and support, and we do events at all of them, or almost all of them for the most part. And so if you are interested in learning more and want to hear about special events coming up, you can go onto our website, the openspaceauthority.org, and sign up for our newsletter. That is a great way to keep in touch and be in the know when new events come up. Is the lowland by Coyote Valley open space also a wetland if floods as well? Good question. So there is, I think this person is asking about Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve, which is a park that is open, which is a preserve that is open year round, every day of the year, except when storms hurt our trails. And it's just south of this area that I've been talking about. It's off of Bailey Avenue and Palm Avenue. It's a beautiful preserve with about 4 miles of hiking trails. And yes, there is something called a wet meadow in Coyote Valley, which is a type of wetland. And it's basically most of the year, it's an open grassy meadow, but in the winter, it kind of floods and gets wet and becomes a seasonal little wetland. So yes, that is also a part of our wetland. And I think might also be a part of the historical 1,000 acres of wetland in like the Laguna Seca, Coyote Valley area. Do you have view sheds for the public to view wildlife without disturbing them? We don't have view sheds at Laguna Seca, but that would be a really cool idea. We do have like camera traps. So we do have cameras set up, and as wildlife pass the cameras, it takes a picture of the wildlife as it passes, and we usually get to share that and see all kinds of cool stuff. But we don't have any view sheds for the public. That would kind of be a cool idea at any of our preserves, really. Like that. We do have bio blitzes out at Laguna Seca, as well as some other properties. If you're not familiar, a bio blitz is you usually utilize a free app on your phone called iNaturalist. If you've never used iNaturalist, it's a great way to help identify plants and animals. And a BioBlitz is when a bunch of people get together and go out to an area and all use iNaturalist to try to document as many different species as possible. So that's one way you can count the different species and keep track of what vegetation and animals and insects that are out in different locations. And we do have BioBlitzes out at Laguna Seca. It's one of my favorite events that we do. I always think it's so fun. Let's see. How often do you check the water for toxins? That's a good question. I'm not sure how often we check the water for toxins. Might be a better question for our natural resources department, but a good question. I was just talking to one of our natural resources technicians before this, and we're chatting about Laguna Seca and talking about how healthy it is and how happy it's looking right now. So I'm not sure how often they check, but I have it from on good authority that it's doing good right now. It's a happy little wetland supporting lots of happy wildlife. Let's see. And okay, last question on the slide with the animals. We had, let's see, I think it was just a couple of slides before. Let's go back. These guys. So the pictures in this one are up at the top left, we have the Ensatina salamander, and it's got its little baby. We've got a deer drinking out of some water just below that, a mallard duckling. Back to the top right, we have some people enjoying an event that we had out at Laguna Seca with some bird watching. And just below that, we have a red-tailed hawk. And in the middle is, of course, some beautiful artwork done of Laguna Seca. Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us in this presentation. Like I said, we're doing a virtual program on the first Friday of every month. So feel free to come back next month and enjoy, or join us for some programs that we have coming up. Spring is fast approaching, and we're soon going to be seeing lots of wildflowers in our parks. And we're going to be having lots of programs to tell you a little bit more about wildflowers and all of the other cool things going on. So joining us for a program, join us for a restoration event. To find out how you can sign up for those, check us out online, check out our event page. There's always something going on. So thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day celebrating wetlands. Bye, everyone.